And so for us, excellence is a real important piece of our culture. Well, I felt like I had to set the bar of what excellence meant. So not only did I have to do things with excellence, but I'd call out things that weren't.
Hello, and welcome to the Global Leadership Podcast. You are here right now because you have influence. No matter where you are, no matter what your context, you have influence. Maybe you are a 20-something who is just starting to step into what it means to lead well at work. Or maybe you're a homeschooling parent who wants to harness the tremendous influence you have in your children's lives. Or maybe you've been leading teams for decades, but you still know that every day is a chance to get better. Whatever the case, welcome. I am so glad you're here and joining us. You're part of a community that believes everyone wins when the leader gets better. Today, me and David Ashcraft, President and CEO of the Global Leadership Network, are going to get really practical. Really practical, talking about culture, how you're creating a culture around you every day by both the things you do and the things you don't do. How you as a leader have more influence than you may think in directing or redirecting culture. We're going to talk about everything from how to develop candor in your workplace and why it's so important. This is going to surprise you guys. How baking cookies can help grow a church. And yes, how wiping down bathroom counters creates a team culture. As you listen in while you're driving, while you're doing dishes, whatever you're doing, be thinking about what you might want to start or stop doing to develop culture. Okay, friends, let's get into it. Hey, David, welcome.
Hey, Whitney, good to see you today.
It's good to have you here on the podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Happy to be here. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. We are talking about something I know you love, which is culture. So we're going to pick your brain all about culture and how you've led organizations into develop their culture. So I know you started your early years in Texas and then you went to Pennsylvania. Can you tell me, was there any culture shock that you experienced moving from Texas to Pennsylvania?
Definitely culture shock. Very different from the standpoint in Texas. So I'll probably offend all my Texas friends, but I am a Texas
friend,
I know
David.
You are, and I am I'm a full-blooded Texan, so I am speaking about myself. But what was interesting, Whitney, going from Dallas to a small town in Pennsylvania. In Dallas, I felt like image was really important. And so even if you weren't true to the part, you had to play the part. You had to look good. You had to look like you had money. You had to act like you were educated. And so appearance and the image was all important. And moving to Pennsylvania, I found people that they didn't have the education. They didn't look like they were wealthy, but they were incredibly wealthy. And so it was just a shift in what was important. And so I think in Pennsylvania, what was more important probably was authenticity or being a little bit more low-key about who you were, as opposed to in Dallas.
I hope Texans are taking notes. We should be more authentic. Okay, keep going, David.
Yeah, so it was just different from that standpoint. And in Texas, everybody's friendly. And so you just say hi to everybody. And so I would do that in Pennsylvania. You're walking down the street and you'd see strangers and I just automatically say, howdy, how are you doing? And they would just kind of, if they even look back at you, they would look at what is your issue? And so Ruth would tell me, would you stop saying hello to people? But it's just kind of ingrained in me. That's what you do in Texas. So,
and that was not something that they were doing in Pennsylvania.
Oh, not at all. No.
On the street.
And there was almost a pride factor of breaking into the community where I would talk to people the first 6-12 months we were there and they'd say, how are you finding it? Making friends and things like that. And there was almost a pride of we're this closed community and you have to really work to be able to be accepted. Whereas in Texas, it's just like, hey, come on in.
So how did you and Ruth do that? How did you kind of break that cultural barrier?
Well, I think the fact that we were new to the community, we were in a church, and what happened right away is we started attracting other new people to the community because they were looking for friends, they were looking for relationships, and so it kind of broke down real quickly that way. And then we just kept being who we were, which part of that I think was some of the early success of LCBC, where we were just different than other churches. And again, this is 1991, so things have changed in 30 years. But we were just friendly to people. And when people would come to the church, whether they were local or just transplants, we said, let's create a friendly atmosphere, which was not the normal church in Pennsylvania, at least our part of Pennsylvania at that time. And so I think that helped us just add a little Southern charm, and
you got to bring Southern charm to Pennsylvania, which is really fun.
Yeah.
Now, isn't there a cookie story? Because you and Ruth are very hospitable as well. And so were you having people in your home? What did that friendliness look like for you guys to break through that barrier?
Well, definitely having people in our home, going to other people's homes. We started right away at the church what we called our cookie ministry, or cookie drops is what we called it. And so somebody would come to the church twice or check in twice. Then we would have somebody take a dozen cookies to their house and drop them off. They weren't to go into the house. They weren't there to try to sell the church. They were just, hey, thanks for coming. Here's some cookies. We appreciate you. And that was it. And so we started doing that when we were 150 people. We still do that today with 26,000 people. And so there are hundreds of cookie drops happening every week. And it's just a real fun thing. And so even now today, people say it's a great way to make a big church seem small.
Yeah.
And it does allow for conversation, but it's not a selling thing. It really is hey, thanks for just coming. So.
Okay. I think that's so interesting. And I know people are listening are going to say, so people come to LCBC and they check that they're new. And then you guys have a process that then someone on staff or a volunteer bakes cookies and drops them off?
Yeah, it's somebody on volunteer. And
wow.
So they're supposed to be home baked. They're not supposed to be store bought. Yep. And we're not sticklers about that, but most of the time they're home baked. And it's just people that, that's what they'd love to do as far as serving, is doing these cookie drops. Ruth did it early days, and she'll still people that she took cookies to and met for the first time, however many years ago, 30 years ago, and they're still in the church today. And so somehow that was their connection. And so they'll still talk about, remember when you brought me cookies and stuff. So it's just little things like that. And I think part of what builds culture are the things that you do. If you're trying to establish a culture in the church, there are some things you do and you do them over and over. Yeah. And that establishes a sense of, we love new people here at our church. We value you as a new person. And then it's the things that you don't do or you don't allow to happen, I think, are the things that really begin to establish culture. And so, it's little practices like that. It's the little details.
It's the little whimsy, small details that people really remember. David, one thing that's interesting, it's funny, cookie ministry. That's not what this episode is about, but it is about, there is something there about hospitality and how it cuts through noise, especially in a really loud world right now. And Ruth and I are going to have to swap cookie recipes because I make chocolate chip cookies every Friday night.
Do you?
I do.
I like chocolate chip cookies.
Yep. I love them very much. And I have my special little way of doing them. My girls now know how to make them. But here's what's really fun. And culture, right? It can be organizational. It can be in a church. It can also be in a neighborhood. And so one thing that my family does is we bake cookies on Friday night and my neighbors know.
That's good.
And they text and they say, hey, are they warm? Can I have some? And that's just been, just that small little detail that makes them feel loved and lets them know that we care and we're around. And so it's been a really sweet, just like you said, what small little pieces that the Putnam family or LCBC Church kind of becomes known for.
Well, and it's what that little thing conveys. And so the fact that you're doing that, it says Putnams are open to new people. Putnams are friendly people. They're hospitable. Yeah. And so the cookie drops for us, it just said, we value you as somebody new. Yeah. We want to be warm and welcoming. And so it's not so much the cookie drop as it is the message it conveys, but you've got to have those little things. Otherwise, people can never get a handle on what you're saying. You can say, we want to be a hospitable church. Well, everybody thinks they're hospitable, but give me some handles. What does that look like? Cookie drops, a system of following up with people. Yeah. So you've got to establish that. And you as a leader have to do that and say, this is what's important.
Right.
And so you do those practices, or it's the things you don't allow. Right. And so for us, excellence is a real important piece of our culture. Well, I felt like I had to set the bar of what excellence meant. So not only did I have to do things with excellence, but I'd call out things that weren't. And so part of our culture was, if I drove onto the property on Monday morning or any time, if there were lights out that I saw in the parking lot, if there was something, that I would instantly text whoever was over that area and say, hey, did you know that there are lights out? Yeah. And it became a thing where they all wanted to catch it before I could catch it. And so they hated to catch it when I hated me catching it. But part of what that was doing is saying, okay, there's a level that's unacceptable. And if we dip below that, David's going to call it out. And so it's just helping set the culture of, and the boundaries of excellence is important, hospitality is important, and things like that.
Absolutely. And I've seen you do this at the GLN where you will, we were just in a meeting not that long ago where you said, hey guys, we really have to focus in and lean in here. And it's such a good reminder. It doesn't feel like, I think when we know as a culture, what do we stand for? So we stand for excellence at the GLN. That's one of our pillars that we want to stand for. So when you call us into excellence, it doesn't feel like a wrist slap, like, like, hey, you're not doing it right, it feels like you're calling us up to a higher standard. And that's where we want to be called as leaders. And so I appreciate the way that you do that. Did you always know how to do that as a leader, or did you develop that muscle?
Well, I think, Whitney, 35 years ago now, when I started at LCBC, culture wasn't even a term you talked about. But what was talked about was personality. And every church or every organization has a personality. And what was said back then was that it would take 7 years for a church or an organization to take on the personality of their leader. And what was often said was, if you don't like the personality of your church and you've been there 7 years, well, then look in the mirror, because they've just taken on your personality. Ooh. So it was more of a personality thing than it was culture, at least as the way it was described. Now, I think I've actually heard more recently the number is maybe 2.5 to 3 years, and the organization takes on your personality. And I know that to be true. I know that at home, when our kids were small and everybody would be cranky or griping at each other, or they're getting sarcastic or wherever they may be. If I was frustrated with the way it felt at home, usually I would kind of snap at people, but then I'd step back and go, okay, wait a minute. They got that from me. I've been sarcastic. I've been short. I've been whatever. And so if I want to change the culture at home, I just need to change the way I act. And because I was setting the tone. And I think as leaders, we set the tone in the organization. And so early days, I didn't know about culture, but early days, I knew what I liked and what I didn't like. And so I just call it out. And then that established who we were over time.
Okay. And so help the leader that's thinking about you just said, okay, 2 to 3 years, or maybe they're at the 7-year mark. You're saying what I hear you saying is, say it out loud so that people know the direction that we want to go. And so is that correct? Are you really saying like, hey guys, this is the personality, or this is the cultural direction that we're going as a church? Would you say, yeah, that's what a leader should be doing inside of a room, is really calling out those pillars and then leading and directing them? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I think so. I never spent a lot of time, nor do I think I would even recommend spending a ton of time saying this is who our culture should be. You can spend a lot of time talking about it. At some point, you just have to start doing it. And I think that happened with us at LCBC. We're probably the first 4 or 5 years, we spent a lot of time talking about who we wanted to be. At some point, we just became. And, I've never actually, until even in this moment, put a handle on it, where maybe that's where it kicked in. And that 7 years was actually for us 5 years or 6 years. And then all of a sudden we became the personality or the culture that we wanted to be. And so, but I think it's what you do. So as a leader, people are watching you. And so it's as little as walking through the building and seeing paper on the floor, and so going over and picking it up. And all of a sudden people notice, oh, well, if he's picking it up, I guess I should pick it up. So that helps set excellence. We at LCBC, the bathroom. So again, when you've got thousands of people, you've got big bathrooms. People are washing their hands. The counters are always wet and messy. And I don't yet found an organization that knows how to keep your counters clean. So we just started, when you go in and use the bathroom, you wash your hands, then you take a paper towel and you wipe the counter down. And everybody on staff does that now. And it was just a simple thing that somebody saw one time, called it out, and now everybody does it. And it's just, again, it's the little things that set that standard. And it's not about, oh, everybody's got to clean the counters. It's about, we've got to be excellent. Part of that means clean counters. So it's the things that you do, the things that you're noticing. And so if I see something, I say, man, Whitney, that was great that you did that. But I call it out in front of everybody else. Whitney was doing this. Then all of a sudden that's set a level of, oh, then that must be the acceptable or the preferred mode. So it's what you accept, what you compliment, what you talk about, or what you don't allow. And so by saying, we don't do that, so wait a minute, we need to stop and say, foul, that's not what we do here. And so that could be something as simple as, if I hear you talking to somebody in a way that's harsher than maybe should happen in a meeting, or if I'm doing it, then I stop myself, okay, wait a minute, that was inappropriate, shouldn't have done that. Then we call it out, just say, that's not the way we talk here.
And especially too, that self-monitoring as a leader, if we feel ourselves maybe raising, like being able to model that as well as, oh gosh, I went too far, I escalated too much, and calling that out as well so that other leaders can see that too. And David, I know that you and I are big fans of Will Goddard's Unreasonable Hospitality, and I hear so much of that inside of your comments here, just from the counters to the cookies to the small touches. I really do hear, and I think this is helpful for listeners to hear, we might think it's the big, broad brushstrokes of leadership that really make the changes. But one thing I want to call out in this conversation that I really am hearing from you is often it's the small details. And one thing I've seen you do that I think really changes culture is you'll walk up and down the hallways and you don't just brush past people or, kind of hustle through the hallway. You stop and you say hello and you make time for people. And that also allows people to feel valued.
Well, and it also says we're busy. What we're doing is
Right.
It's important. We're busy, but you're important as an individual too. And so as busy as I am, I've got time to slow down and talk. Or for me, so I was late to this meeting and I do not look at my phone once I sit down in a meeting. And so Meredith, my assistant, was texting me saying, hey, you're late, but I don't look because I want to convey when I'm in the meeting that I'm locked in this meeting. So I won't look at my phone. So I'll never know that I'm late or that I was late for this meeting. But part of that is to say, when we're in a meeting, we're all to be locked in. This is important. Let's focus on each other and do that. And so again, I set, in some ways, the tone as the leader. And so I want everybody else to kind of follow suit as well.
It also curates such a form of master communication. I was just listening to Vanessa Van Edwards, and she was talking about really making sure that you make eye contact, almost so much that you want to know their person's eye color, which, again, is another way of building culture of saying, hey, I see you and you're so valuable. And I think that's so important. David, did you see anything at the GLN when you came in? We just want to be a place of vulnerability that you saw in our culture that you're like, gosh, I really want to start shifting this, even if it was in a small way. Was there anything for you that you wanted to start shifting?
Well, first of all, when I came on staff, I was excited to be here. I love the GLN, and so it's fun to be here. Probably the biggest shift that I saw was at the time that I came in, there was a lack of, how do I say this? Not authenticity, but there was a lack of willing to go ahead and call each other out if there was something good or not. And so at LCBC, we created a culture where you're in a meeting, we're in a meeting, and we evaluate everything. And as we're evaluating, there may be times that I need to say, it wasn't as strong, Whitney, as it should have been. And, or even just a question, say why. And so there's a right way to do it and a wrong way. We talk about communicating truth with grace. And so Whitney, I saw this, tell me why you did it that way. And would it have been better to do it another way? And at least calling that out. And so there was a sense of maybe a lack of candor in the GLN that I saw when I came in. And so needed to help establish and say, it's okay to question each other. And it doesn't mean you're bad. It doesn't mean you're not a good person. It doesn't mean I don't think you're great at your job, but this situation could have been done differently or better, at least I think. So help me understand that. And so probably lack of candor. And so I purposely then would call things out and say things just to begin to help establish that, but also to say, and hopefully to model that as we're doing that, it's okay. And you're still a great person and I still love you and I think you're great at your job. But if we're going to get better, we've got to be able to be candid and call things out with each other. And so you start doing it, modeling it. And I don't doubt that it made people uncomfortable. I know it did because people would tell me it made them uncomfortable.
Oh, they would come and tell you.
Oh, yeah. They'd say, and more than anything, it'd be just kind of like, oh, well, you did that. So are you upset with me? Are you mad at me? Because in past regimes, maybe it felt like if you were candid that way, that meant you were upset with the person. And it meant, no, again, we're striving for excellence. The only way we're going to get excellent is by continuing up our game and being candid with each other. And so that was that was a big thing to work on. And we still work on that today. And so part of that too, though, Whitney, meant I had to be comfortable with people being candid with me. And so as people would, then again, it's just natural when somebody calls you out on something, you want to kind of power up and say, well, who are you to, kind of question me? And I had to be gracious and say, okay, I appreciate you doing that. And I can remember several instances where my internal response was to snap back, and I can snap if I want to, but I had to kind of swallow that and say, okay, I'm not going to snap back, because if I do, then I've just gone totally against the whole principle of candor. And so if I want people to be candid and I want the opportunity to be candid with others, I've got to respond gracefully to this and say, man, thank you for calling that out. I appreciate that. And I'll definitely work on that, as opposed to saying what I wanted to say, which was, you're wrong. And here's why you're wrong.
You're wrong and I'm right.
Exactly. So, So we just need to realize everything we do, we're setting the culture. And every time we respond to something where people are gauging and going, oh, okay, well, then that's a line I can't cross with David because of the way he responded, or that's a place I need to go with David because of the way he responded. So everything we do, everything we respond to is setting culture.
Yeah. Okay, I'm curious about this because I have appreciated how you have brought candor into the room, and we can talk about it. I also see you doing this, and I want you to kind of end on this note. I see you be candid. You've also created a culture of safety where I don't feel like just because you say, hey, Whitney, I've seen you do that a little bit better. Maybe we could practice. Or like you said, you have, I've seen you just do this in a different way. Can you tell me more about why you did it that way this time? So I've seen you do that, but I feel safe. I don't feel like, oh, David's angry at me or whatever. So can you talk about just creating a room of safety inside of your organization so that people don't go cry in the bathroom after maybe something like that happens?
Man, that's an interesting one, Whitney. I don't know. I mean, part of it. So again, as I try to set the culture at the organization, part of it is we're doing very important things. It matters for eternity, but let's also enjoy each other and let's also have fun. So it's okay to laugh. So in the midst of a serious, intense conversation, I also look for opportunities to laugh or to, and not, sometimes it's letting off steam, but not so much that, but also we're still okay with each other. I can remember many times at LCBC where we would meet in the executive team and we would have very strong conversations. And so as soon as the conversations were done and as soon as the meeting was done, then if it were with you, I would come to your office right away and say, okay, Whitney, are we okay? Tell me how you're feeling right now. And that had nothing to do with who you are as a person, had nothing to do with your safety here in the organization, but are you okay? Totally. And if I misstepped or misspoke or if I was too harsh in the meeting, then I would want you to tell me that and we would talk that through. And then the next meeting, I would come back and say, so last week with Whitney, I kind of got cranky and I went too far and I'm sorry. And I sat down with Whitney after the meeting and I apologized and I just need to, in front of all of you, say, I'm sorry. And so it's some of those kind of things. And I think what we forget, Whitney, as leaders, we forget that we are influencing people all the time. And so if you, like me, I started at LCBC by myself. I was the only staff person. And you kind of forget as the leader that you truly do have influence. And so as you hire people, you keep, and we grew to a staff of 300. I still felt like I was just one of the team. I was just one. But the more people you hire and the higher you go in the organization, people, they're watching you and they're taking seriously everything you do, where a lot of times I'm not even thinking seriously about what I'm doing, but I just have to be more aware as the leader. People are watching. I am creating culture with everything that I do. And so being careful with that.
Absolutely. David, thank you so much. This was such a good conversation about
Thanks for the
insights on culture. Yeah,
thanks, Whitney.
Okay, let's get real here, friends. David just said people are watching you and they're taking seriously what you do. I want you to stop right now and try to get on the other side of yourself. The people you lead, or even just the people around you, are watching. What are they seeing? As they observe you, what culture are you creating? Are you creating one of sarcasm or snarkiness, like David mentioned he realized he sometimes did with his family? Or are you creating a culture of welcome, a culture of candor? Just take a moment and contemplate that. Now I want you to think of either one thing you want to stop doing because it's not creating the kind of culture you want, or one thing you want to start doing to foster a thriving, healthy culture around you. I've been thinking a lot about this. And for me, I want to really start seeing people, like really see them. For me, this means I want to spend intentional time with my teammates. I can start doing this by moving away from simply cranking out work to really noticing their strengths and telling them I see them. I can ask about their actual lives and invest right where they are. And when I have opportunities to genuinely champion them, I do. So, what step are you going to take to create the kind of culture your team, your church, or your family needs right now? Hey, thank you, friends, for listening in today. You are investing in your leadership, and that really matters. Each little step you take to invest in getting better is one step closer to becoming the kind of leader God intends for you to be. Thanks for joining us on the Global Leadership Podcast. And remember, everyone wins when the leader gets better.